Have any of you guys ever heard of WEZR AM in Lewiston, Auburn, Maine, which is, it's dubbed as Easy 1240 AM. Basically it's a small town full service radio station that had no website for a long time, but they recently built a website and they now stream online. Basically Easy 1240 is your typical small town full service adult contemporary radio station with no website that now has a website, and they basically air a lot of songs that you're not going to find on the big guys. The playlist is kind of extensive, and with all of these small town full service radio stations that are jumping on the internet, it almost has me wondering how long it'll be until the Radio New England Broadcast Group stations of New Hampshire's North Country will be on the internet. Although the rumor had it that they were never going to be online, I think, there's a growing trend. Now, here's what really confuses me all the time. If the so-called internet radio royalty fee structure, approved of by the Recording Industry Association of America, if the fees are really all that bad, then why the hell are stations jumping on the internet to stream online? I really don't know. But basically, how many of you, particularly Mainers who may be watching this video, are familiar with the station I'm talking about? It's WEZR AM. That's the call sign. So if you hop onto google.com and you do a term search for WEZR AM, or hop on to Radio Locator, that's www.radio-locator.com, and you do a term search for WEZR AM, or just WEZR and seek out the AM. That's the central main station. But what I like about it is that the station is it's a very tiny, small station. It plays music. The other alternatives in central Maine are 92 Moose, that's 92.3 WMME, or as in WM as in Maine, and then ME for the state postal code. That's basically Hot AC, Top 40. Then there's also, there's also Mid-Coast 102.5, WQSS Camden, Maine. That's a great station, and it's very much to my delight. It has no website or no logo or anything, so that's another good station. Basically, aside from WQSS FM Mid-Coast 102.5 from the Camden, Rockland, Mid-Coast, Maine area, WEZR Easy 1240 AM is a great small-town radio station with no website. But now they have a website, and now they have a stream. I would love it if Mid-Coast 102.5 would never build a website, but they would start streaming online, and you could access the Listen Live link through the website of another Blueberry Broadcasting radio station, such as, say, for KISS 94.5 WKSQ from Ellsworth, Bangor, Maine, were to start streaming. But Mid-Coast 102.5 WQSS Camden could start streaming online too, but they could never build a website, so they'd post the Listen Live link for it somewhere on the KISS 94.5 website. That's my favorite phenomena or occurrence. is when a small-town, full-service radio station starts to stream online but never builds a website. So how many of you are familiar with WEZR Easy 1240? Basically what they are is they're an adult contemporary station. They serve a similar purpose as WLTN Mix 96.7, where they hybrid in they stick to a primarily adult contemporary / oldies sort of a format that spans the 70s through the early 2000s. And they like to play, when they play, they'll play songs by various particular artists, but they'll deliberately select a song that's not the mainstream hit from the artist. And they'll hybrid that in with regular songs. I mean, such as a couple of the favorite regular songs for WLTN Mix 96.7 are All I Want to Do by Sheryl Crow. What's another one? Morning Train, 9 to 5 by Sheena Easton. There's a couple of regular songs that you can hear in most places, like I'm Like a Bird by Nelly Furtado, Beautiful by Christina Aguilera. But then you'll hear songs get mixed in, like Both Sides of the Story by Genesis and stuff. Well, Easy 1240 WEZR from Lewiston, Auburn, Maine follows that type of a theme, where they mix in the eclectic AC with the normal AC. However, it's a little bit different because, I mean, you think about it, no two stations are exactly alike. I'm sure WEZR Easy 1240 does a much better job covering the happenings of the Lewiston, Auburn, Maine area than they would the Littleton, New Hampshire area, just as Mix 96.7 WLTN would do a much better job covering the happenings of the Littleton, New Hampshire area than they ever would for the Lewiston, Auburn area, because, I mean, the station covers the area that their signal stretches. Also getting it. Just gotta give some of that info I said time to absorb. And Easy 1240, or there's the station in Lewiston, Auburn, Maine area known as Easy 1240, call sign WEZR AM. That station is similar to Mix 96.7 WLTN, my most favorite radio station, but it is a little bit different, mainly in the nature that there's more interruptions. They interrupt the formatics of the station more frequently. Now, much like WLTN AM, Oldies 1400 and the Golden Great 98.5, the station interrupts its broadcasts much more frequently. That is Easy 1240 for local, scholastic, academic games and stuff, sort of how WLTN AM broadcasts, local high school basketball games and stuff. It's a similar idea, except that the music is all over on the adult contemporary music is all over on the AM station. And there's versus with the WLTN apparatus, as I like to call it, all of the adult contemporary is actually on the FM dial, meaning that for a full service, small town full service radio station with no website airing an adult contemporary format, actually being able to get debated over an FM signal or frequency definitely tells you that WLTN FM is a treat. And meanwhile the oldies are over on the AM signal. Well, with WEZR Easy 1240, all of the adult contemporary is actually confined to the AM dial. This just helps me recognize how precious WLTN is, but then I thought, there's probably no other station out there like it. Well, no, there aren't, because no two stations are exactly alike. But there are, close by similar stations, such as Y 106.3 WYZY from the Saranac Lake area. That's basically a somewhat of a more independently owned and operated counterpart to the XXX radio, Burlington, Vermont's WXXX, which shares a very similar call sign in my favorite Top 40 station. Basically, WXXS, KISS 102.3, is my most favorite Top 40 radio station. But it does have a station in the Saranac Lake area that's sort of similar to the formatting. It's a showcase of the Top 40 hits, but it hybrids in harder to find, more difficult to find songs, such as Suga Suga by Why You Look So Good by Baby Bash, or Don't Mess With My Man, the radio edit by Nivea, or Music's Got Me Feeling So Good One More Time by Daft Punk gets mixed in with the current hits, and it's very difficult to gauge what exactly the hits are. But what makes me like or appreciate WXXS-FM better is that they have a higher concentration or a higher abundance of the eclectics, and there's no DJs except for the morning drive. So, with the exception of the morning drive. So, nobody's going, now this is a new song by this. They just play the music, so there's no telling what song is the eclectic and what songs are the hits. Easy 1240 has an automated song identifier for, I believe, I'm guessing, the newer emerging hits. Easy 1240 mixes in, well, among some of the mainstream music that Easy 1240 mixes in, features a lot more mainstream, very recent music, versus I like WLTN FM better because, in Littleton, New Hampshire, because the mainstream songs they mix in are primarily older. Like it could be from 2003 or 2002 or older. So, like, you're not going to hear Love Song by Sarah Bareilles or, get mixed in. You're only going to hear things like, for instance, If You're Gone by Dave Matthews Band, or Unwell by Matchbox 20 or something. Like, you're not going to hear a song like, you're not going to hear a song by, a very recent song, King of Anything, or, my God, what was that song? Break Even by The Script. What else was I going to say? But here's a nagging question. All right. If very tiny small town stations such as WCFR, AM 1480 and FM 106.5 from the Springfield, Vermont area, Springfield's Variety, or including Easy 1240 from Lewiston, Auburn, Maine, or even WKTJ, Big Hits 99.3, which is preparing to relaunch a brand new website, and along with it starts jumping online to stream. It's such small, tiny, small-town radio stations that are most likely even smaller than the Radio New England broadcast stations of New Hampshire, Radio New England Broadcast Group stations. Then why are the Radio New England Broadcast Group stations not streaming online? That's a nagging question. That would certainly make the motel visits go extinct. Oh, that's another thing. Visiting motels to record audio cassette after audio cassette tape consecutively, one on top of the other, one on top of the next. That's that's traveling by route of the dinosaur. That's going the way of the dinosaur. And you know what's causing radio station taping to go extinct is the online webcast. You don't have to perfect the position of the radio. The broadcast's always going to come in perfect, with the exception of the pixelization, Now, okay, here's what I would do. I would travel to a motel and rent out a room that I tested with my handheld Walkman, tune right to the frequency, yes and in DX mode, not local mode. Test which room got the best signal, get the strongest signal for the stations I wanted to record, the ones with no webcast, and preferably no website. When I would locate or seek out the specific particular room that got the best reception for the desired radio stations with no websites, I would bring my radio to that motel room, rent out the room for prolonged periods of time, such as 2 or more weeks, and I would start taping. It was always becoming to be a pain in the ass, though, because I'd have to wake up, every hour to change the tape or whatnot. I thought of another idea. What if there was such a thing as a boombox? You know how boomboxes, they come with audio cassette decks, and you can tape and stuff? What if somebody were to replace the audio cassette deck with a CD-ROM MP3 recorder? And now most of these people, it is possible to record CDs of a radio broadcast, but generally that entails expensive, costly equipment that needs to be hooked up externally, meaning that you need to set the volume inputs and output levels and stuff. Well, what if there was such a boombox where I lost my train of thought. What if there was such a boombox where instead of an audio cassette deck, it had a built-in CD-ROM MP3 recorder? So translation, or bottom line, there could be a boombox that could generate MP3 recordings directly onto a blank CD-ROM of a radio broadcast. Now, the thing about AM and FM radio is that the broadcast equivalent, or the digital MP3 equivalent of an FM broadcast, is never going to be any higher than 192K. So, I mean, a typical CD will hold as much as 74 or 80 minutes worth of data. But if you record, that's if you record in, you know, compact disc mode, which is 1144K. But if you record in MP3 format at 192 kilobytes per second, then that bit rate, that's basically the MP3 bit rate equivalent of an FM broadcast, right? Because if you record at a bit rate that's higher than the digital equivalent of FM quality sound, then you're basically recording an MP3 that's higher quality than the FM broadcast. Thereby you're wasting digital space. So what am I getting at? Well, typical audio cassette tapes I would use would be 90 minutes or 120 minutes, meaning that you'd have to flip the 90-minute tape roughly every 45 minutes, or the 120-minute tapes every 60 minutes, basically once an hour. Well, I was thinking, if you could record non-stop an MP3 at 192 kilobytes per second in this built-in built-in CD-ROM on your boombox. Again, if you could record an MP3 directly from the radio broadcast using a boombox that has, instead of a built-in audio cassette deck like that, it could instead have a built-in CD-ROM recorder. There would be no more flipping tapes every 45 minutes or every 60 minutes. The second you press record, the CD could keep recording and recording and recording either until I press stop or until it runs out of disk. Now, I can't do all the math, but I can figure that possibly a typical 700 megabyte CD-ROM might be able to hold several multiple hours of 192 kilobyte per second audio. If you were to take a whole ton of songs, all recorded at a 192 kilobyte per second bit rate, and you were to burn them onto a CD-ROM that's 700 megabytes, and then you were to play that CD-ROM containing 192K MP3s files, you were to play that CD-ROM and load them all into Winamp, how many hours would you get? That's a good question. I don't know the answer to that. But what I do know the answer to is that however many hours you come up with is however many hours of live radio broadcast you would be able to fit on every one of those CD-ROMs. That's pretty sweet, huh? And that's what I would want to do. I would get to know WLTN's broadcast schedule, which I believe its interruptions are the morning show, weekdays from 6 to 10 in the morning. And then Sundays, there's some sort of a local trade show or swap shop show that airs, I think, 6 a.m. Sunday mornings. I would have to reconfer with management. And WLTN AM airs broadcasts for sporting events, high school basketball in the fall and winter, and baseball in the spring, summer, and fall. They are WLTN AM, Oldies 1400, and the Golden Great 98.5 are affiliated with WEEI Sports Radio Network. Also WXXF KISS 102.3, or KISS 102, or KISS 102 FM, the North Country's hit music radio station. They air the open house party every Saturday between 7 p.m. to midnight on Sunday morning. And possibly also 7 p.m. to midnight on Sundays, with midnight to Monday, you know. And their morning show is basically a showcasing of the hit music, where a disc jockey comes on and lets people know of, like, this song is blah 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 and it's by blah blah blah. And basically they identify what the new songs are, you know, what they're called and who sings them. And it's primarily hit music. There's low power translators over in the Berlin area, which basically that morning show I am mentioning here on WXXS-FM does not get repeated on the Berlin translator because it switches over to the Mix 96.7 FM morning show. Basically, that morning show on WLTN-FM is primarily mainstream adult contemporary. It's basically, it's not worth taping because it's lots of there's lots of dialogue exchanged between disc jockeys, and it's kind of mainstream. For people who enjoy the mainstream AC and they want to hear what kind of hits or normal, you know, hit music that Mix 96.7 can air, the morning show is for them. It's not for me. Plus the morning drive, I'm typically asleep. But basically, again, this is a nagging thought that never will escape my mind. Currently, there's only one way to record from the radio. Either audio cassette or an externally connected CD recorder that records not MP3s, but in fact compact disc audio, which only buys about 80 minutes. And any MP3 recorder would need to be hooked up externally. Therefore, you'd have to, like, anytime you adjust the volume control on your, you know, on your radio speakers or the audio input level on the external device that does the recording, that impacts how loud or soft the recording is. Whereas audio cassette tapes always come out at the exact same volume that the broadcast is, you know, because it's internally wired. Oops. It's internally hooked up, this thing you see here. So the volume is automatically controlled. There, you don't have to play with it, you know, it's all set. Well, what if you could just go whoosh, scoop out the whole tape deck, right? And you could wire this thing with a CD-ROM capable of recording MP3 files direct from the broadcast directly onto a compact disc. And it would be internally wired, so just as those audio cassette tapes, as I was explaining to you, are always the correct volume levels. You don't have to play with any knobs or anything. Well, what if you could do the same thing with a compact disc MP3 recorder? Meaning you could just insert blank CD-ROMs and tell it to record at the desired bit rate. For FM quality, the optimum would be 192K. And you can actually make MP3s of live radio broadcasts without having to play with any volume level input or output things. You just insert the disc and you press record, just as you would for an audio cassette tape. That would save you an awful lot of space, you know, storage, for those of you who are facing a very imminent residential downsize, such as I am. Yeah, and there would be no more waking up every hour in the middle of the night. I could, you know, stick in a CD-ROM, press record sometime at 10 o'clock, say, after the morning show just ends. Then leave the motel room and be gone for the entire day. And unless the motel facility experiences a power outage, it would pretty much be recording the whole time I was gone. I could be listening in my car radio, on my car stereo, or on my handheld Walkman device as I'm walking around at the destination places I go. And rest assured, the station I'm listening to in my car or on my Walkman is recording all onto a CD in 192 MP3 format. That's pretty darn sweet, huh? That's what I picture doing, you know. Now, that's probably never going to happen, but that's where my imagination takes me, basically. That's what some of those things I imagine doing. That, you know, it's either it happens or it doesn't, and probably it's not going to happen, but it'd be nice if it did. For instance, I picture moving up to Far Hill Road off of West Main Street in Littleton, New Hampshire, and somehow using a special device that electromagnetically measures where the signal for WLTN-FM is the strongest, and then electromagnetically measure where the signals for the 94.1, the 95.3, and the 98.5 low-power FM translators are the strongest, and insert multiple roof antennas, high-powered ones, by the way, one that could receive the low-power FM translators for Radio New England Broadcast Group for Littleton, New Hampshire, another antenna that can receive optimal signal strength for WLTN-FM, and maybe an additional one that could get optimal signal strength for 102.3 WXXS, and then rig up these high-powered, high-energy radio tuners that could feature internally wired CD-ROM MP3 recorders. Now, by internally wired, I mean like the audio cassette deck. You just pop in a CD-ROM, and you don't have to play with any output or input things. It knows how loud or soft to make it'd basically be the same exact dynamic volume output as the actual broadcast itself. And that's excellent to hear, because audio cassette tapes usually diminish. The quality of sound usually diminishes as the broadcast gets written onto the tape ribbon. So that always sucks. But with CD-ROM in digital MP3 format, particularly if it equals the digital MP3 gets written at a fixed bit rate, which matches the optimum quality for an FM broadcast, there will be no loss of audio quality as the broadcast gets recorded. So, now, picture that, though. Rooftop antennas, living way up high in a hill on Far Hill Road, using some electromagnetic device. Now, I'm certain there's got to be some way to do it, because if you've ever seen those contour maps online, but if you've also seen those heat-seeking maps that measure the behavior of a radio signal, and you see like areas that are shaded more darkly, and then there's little gaps or holes in the signal. Might be such a device where you can measure where the signal just floods you, just like really jumps out at you. And not via multicasting, but via it really just jumps out at you. That would be where I would want to build the house. Now, I'm speaking completely in irrelevant hypotheticals, but this is the only time I'm ever happy, is when I do this. Reality sucks, and I don't want to hear what the real deal is. I just want to hear results for my fantasies. I don't want to know what the real deal is. So it's delusional, I guess. kind of like, don't tell me the truth. Just tell me what I want to hear. But again, I mean, wouldn't that be interesting to have a radio where instead of wouldn't it be nice to have a boombox such as this one where instead of an audio cassette deck that can record from the radio, you could have the CD-ROM MP3 recorder that could be directly hot-wired so that you don't have to play with any volume output levels. You just stick in a CD-ROM, a blank CD-ROM or blank CD-RW. You hit record, or it could just take CD-ROM. You just pop it in. You pop in a blank CD-ROM. You hit record. You select the bit rate you want and press record, and it could just record a radio broadcast. Write it directly onto MP3 format. So I mean, imagine that. Imagine being able to pop in a blank CD-ROM into a boombox such as this one, and be able to select your desired bit rate, press record, and rest assured that your desired radio broadcast is being written into digital MP3 format, and it's going to sound exactly as it did over the air, except it's going to be in MP3 format. So I could have these big lengthy MP3 files, and all I would need is an MP3 player. And I could be walking around here in Carlisle, Massachusetts, listening to, on an MP3 player, a big lengthy MP3 file recording of a great small town full service radio station with no website. And I could listen on the device as though I'm listening to the broadcast, but when in fact I'm listening to an MP3 of the broadcast. And it sounds so convincingly clear, it's almost like studio quality. All of these things I'm describing are probably never going to happen, but they're darn fun to imagine, that's for sure. Oh yeah, I mean, that'll definitely make tapes go bye-bye in my book, that's for certain. That's what's going to inevitably cause audio cassette tapes to go extinct in my book, by the way. Now, what if there were a way that you could record, there were such a DVD recorder device that could, instead of recording in direct-to-DVD format, which allows you that age-old 246-hour quality choice, what if instead it could allow you to write the broadcast directly into AVI, MP4 type of file format, so that, or AVI MP4.mov format, so that you didn't have to record directly into live DVD format, but instead you could record directly to file format. That might buy you a lot more DVD space and might be able to make your DVDs last for several hours instead of just a couple. That's kind of like, the DVD-ROM equivalent to recording MP3 CDs instead of music CDs, whereas music CDs only last you 80 minutes tops for the 700 megabyte CD-ROMs will only last you maximum of 80 minutes. In the musical format, which is 1144K, or which is 1144K, but recording a CD-ROM in MP3 format buys you a lot more recording time because the file is compressed. Well, what if there were a way that there could be a DVD recorder that could be capable of recording onto the DVD-ROM recording directly to DVD-ROM in a compressed file format rather than a DVD format. That might make each DVD last longer. That would be a very viable replacement to VHS. If any company could come up with a way to do that, to record directly off of the broadcast onto the DVD in compressed file formats, such as AVI, MP4, MOV, that would cause me to abandon ship on the VHS immediately. Same as I would continue using audio cassette tapes unless somebody could come up with a way to have boomboxes where instead of featuring an audio cassette deck that could record broadcasts. All right, let's do this. Finger keeps blocking the way. Wow. Where was I? Okay. The age-old tale is that VHS videotape is traveling by route of the dinosaur, right? So, well, why the heck do I keep using them? I don't know. But I could definitely recite a way, the only way of which would cause me to abandon ship on the whole VHS thing. And here's what it is. What if there could be a DVD recorder, a DVD thing, such as what's on the bottom here, DVD recorder that could be capable of recording broadcasts directly into compressed file formats, such as the .avi, the .mp4, or the .mov file formats, could actually record the broadcasts into, instead of regular old, plain old DVD format, could record them directly into compressed file format. What I am describing here is basically the DVD-ROM equivalent to recording compact discs directly into MP3 format instead of musical format. So when you get a CD-ROM, basically the CD-ROM equivalent of what I'm describing is like a typical 700 megabyte CD-ROM will be able to fit up to no greater than 80 minutes, or 57 minutes and 50-something seconds worth of audio. But using that same 700 megabyte CD-ROM to record into compressed formats would offer you several more hours worth of recording. Well, I would like it if somebody could come up with a DVD-ROM recorder or a DVD recorder that could be capable of not only recording in direct DVD format, which consumes a lot of disk and very quickly. What if somebody could come up with a DVD recorder that's capable of recording your favorite programs directly into compressed file format? But much like what I described here with the boombox, having the direct to CD-ROM MP3 recorder be internally wired, so you don't have to play around with any volume input or output levels. It always gets the volume right. What if the DVD recorder I'm talking about could also be internally wired so that you don't have to play around with any buttons or anything. You just slip in your DVD, hit record, and rest assured it's behaving exactly like a regular DVD recorder, only that it's writing your recordings directly into a compressed file format, such as .avi, .mp4 or .mov. It might allow you to make a choice between the different file formats, or it might have a fixed format based on the device you're using, such as how Nikon Coolpix cameras always use the .mov, which is QuickTime Video Movie format. Or my Nikon D90 records into AVI format. So it might depend on the host device. But wouldn't that be interesting now? I mean, just imagine this. What if you could have a boombox where you could record directly from the radio, live radio broadcasts, using a CD-ROM recorder instead of an audio cassette deck? And it could be internally wired, so all you need to do is slip in the CD-ROM, slip in the blank CD-ROM, hit I always forget this step. All you're going to have to do is slip in the blank CD-ROM into the boombox. Make sure you're tuned into the station you want to record. Slip in the DVD-ROM. So all you need to do is slip in the slip in the CD. I'm getting tongue-tied. Imagine if you could tune into your favorite radio station that you want to record from. You slip in a blank CD-ROM. You select the MP3 bit rate that you wish to record at. You hit record, and you could virtually get hour after hour of live radio broadcast directly recorded or written to the blank CD-ROM. And you could leave your motel room and have a day out on the town and rest assured you're recording the live broadcast onto a CD-ROM without any interruptions. You don't have to flip any tapes or anything. You don't have to worry about volume input and output levels because it's internally hot wired, just as the cassette decks are. Do you think there's a way you can do it? I wonder. You might need to have a little miniature built-in computer, though, to help guide the CD-ROM recorder. Tell it, how to write files, MP3 files at the different bit rates and stuff. It's kind of like how handheld digital cameras these days have built-in computers and softwares and stuff. What do you think of this idea? I think it's a really intelligent idea. Now, don't use a radio boombox such as this one, because radios such as this have a pretty crummy receiver on it, and particularly this problem is exacerbated by the fact that it uses a indoor built-in radio antenna as opposed to being able to be hooked up externally to an outdoor antenna. I got more high-powered, souped-up receivers that could be capable of being hooked up to an outdoor antenna, but they got tape decks like that, But that's a good question. Just as they could internally hotwire an audio cassette deck recorder like so into this boombox, do you think it could be possible for people to hotwire in a CD-ROM recorder that could record your live radio broadcasts digitally into MP3 format? Now, again, FM quality broadcast is at best 192K per second, and quite possibly a fluctuating variable bit rate between 192, the 160, and the 128 digital quality. Maybe you could even make the radio smart, and you could tell the tape deck, the CD-ROM MP3 recording device to actually automatically seek out AM or FM quality, whereas it doesn't tell you the bit rate. It only tells you AM quality, FM quality, so that as you record the broadcast automatically gets written into the digital equivalent of that station's broadcast quality. It could fluctuate the bit rate. So say as you get some dead air, the bit rate is much lower than it would be when the station is blasting the speakers. And you could tell it, like, as you record the CD-ROM, it could say, AM or FM. And if it's an AM broadcast, not only will it reduce the bit rate, but it will also flicker it into MP3 mono, because AM is automatically mono, right? So you could click a button, and any AM radio recordings, as you play them back on Winamp, and you'll see the mono light, on the top of the Winamp where it measures, like if it's in stereo and the bit rate, you'll see the mono indicator is lit up. That would be pretty darn cool, huh? Pretty darn snazzy. I think that would be wonderful. So okay, here you go. You got a boombox as such, but instead of the tape deck, instead of the audio cassette tape deck, or instead of the audio cassette deck, you get rid of that, and you replace it with the CD-ROM MP3 recorder that can record live radio broadcasts directly into compressed MP3 file format. And you could have a very high-powered, highly specialized computer, such as the software featured on a typical handheld digital camera these days. You could choose between AM and FM quality, and it would tell you not the bit rate, but in fact whether it's AM or FM quality. And if you select AM, it automatically switches the MP3 into a MP3 mono in a much lower bit rate that maybe matches the AM equivalent. And maybe the bit rate can be variable bit rate, so that it can move with the broadcast's quality. And so as the broadcast quality fluctuates based on the levels of volume output coming through the station at the time, such as dead air versus in the middle of a loud song, the bit rate can also fluctuate, probably capping off or topping off at 192 kilobytes per second. And basically, if you record from the radio, it can prompt you on, is this an AM or FM broadcast? And if it's an AM broadcast, it will record at a much lower audio bit rate, and it will flick into mono. So as you play back an MP3 recording you made of an AM broadcast, you would actually see the mono indicator light up in Winamp. I think this is all pretty fascinating. What do you think of this? Do you think it can be done? That's pretty snazzy. And maybe, I like the idea about rest assured the audio will always be at the proper input and output levels, because the built-in CD-ROM recorder would be internally wired, such as the audio cassette deck is, so that it will always get the volume right. You don't have to play with anything. Imagine if I could just slip in a blank CD-ROM into this thing here. Close it. Select AM or FM quality, the audio sound. Press record. And it could record directly the live broadcast immediately into compressed MP3 format. And it could just keep right on writing until I tell it to stop or until it runs out of disk. Do the math. A typical 1144 music CD will last you about 80 minutes for the typical. I would be working with 700 megabyte CD-ROMs. Well, instead of 80 minutes, imagine how lengthy a single MP3 recording could max out at if done at the FM broadcast digital equivalent, such as 192, 160, 128 variable bit rate. I think you could fit plenty of long hours of recording on this CD-ROM, and you don't have to worry about flipping or changing tapes every 45 or 60 minutes. No more setting alarm clocks in the middle of the night. No more rushing back to the motel room to try to make sure you don't lose any precious tape time. And no more crowding up corners and walls with countless audio cassette tapes that cannot be queued up well. Plus, I mean, you could take the massive MP3 files and generate smaller files. That is, saving the, keeping a hold of the big gigantic file, but creating like copies, like file name -1, file name -2, where you can easily queue up various songs you remember hearing. See, digital MP3 files are much easier to queue up than is audio cassette tape. And plus, since more can be fit on those MP3 files, instead of, spewing through 10 audio cassette tapes, each one with double-sided, you could just open up that single MP3 file in Winamp or in a popular music file playing program such as Winamp, iTunes, Windows Media Player, Real Player, stuff like that. This is all pretty fascinating. Alright. That's pretty neat. And again, the only way I will, abandon ship on this whole VHS thing is if somebody could generate such a DVD recorder that would be capable of recording directly into compressed file format, that being either of the popular formats, such as .avi, which is moving JPEG, .mp4, or .mov, and be wired internally so it'll get the input and output levels for volume and video exactly right, just as the typical direct-to-DVD format would get you. Except not record in DVD format, but in fact record directly into compressed format. Pretty amazing. This video has been recorded at the maximum resolution available for this Casio Exilim 2010 edition phone. It's a cell phone with very limited capabilities as far as quality availabilities go, but it's really gotten, this is set, it won't go any higher than this. This is the max resolution for video recording. and the maximum length file as well.